Hey guys, Zach with Max Body Armor here. Check us out, maxbodyarmor.com for all your armor needs. I'm gonna go through something here today with regards to domestic travel in the US, bringing our gear with us, going through TSA. Just wanted to kind of run through it for anybody who is not familiar. We will go over hardware. I've even got some information for you guys regarding armor. So we'll get into it right now. Okay, so first things first, I predominantly travel a lot more with long guns, and when you do that, you usually end up having some space for handguns to go in the same checked bag with the long gun. However, oh, by the way, full disclosure, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not giving you legal advice, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm gonna have our gentleman in the productions unit do some cut-ins here for us with all the information, websites in the description with the links and stuff like that, so you guys can check out TSA's own information on that directly and get the legal skinny from what they're telling you directly. But yeah, I just want to get into it a little bit here. So like I was saying, I travel with long guns predominantly, so if I do bring a handgun with me as well, weight restrictions permitting and stuff like that, I'll put it in the same case with the long guns if I have a handgun. But to cover handguns first, just to get that out of the way, because that's one that I get information for a lot, because we have a lot of states now with reciprocity on, concealed carry, and or somebody's going into Yellowstone or whatever their thing is and they want to have their handgun with them. So this is a overkill case in my opinion. This is kind of similar to a Pelican case. This is like one that you can get from like Harbor Freight for like 40 or 50 bucks compared to the full Pelican price. This is something that I utilize for a gas mask and some canisters and stuff like that for CBRN purposes, but it kind of demonstrates my point. So what you want to have are hard-sided cases. Now, I'll have some stuff dropped in regards to some cost-effective options that, this is, like I said, like 40 bucks or something like that. In the last year or so, that might have gone up in price. You want hard-sided cases, but they do make some ones from like Plano. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that brand, but you can find them on like Bass Pro, Amazon, whatever, and those are like $15. And they're hard-sided plastic, like injection molded or whatever, and they have the grommets or the holes for putting a lock through. These are metallic, just like the Pelican cases are metallic, which is the best way to go. But the Plano one would be 15 bucks, and it's like plastic, but it technically meets the requirements. So they want a hard-sided case that's lockable, and you obviously have to have locks. They don't determine what type of locks you have to have, so you guys can use padlocks with a key. You guys just need to be prepared for the process, and I'll get into that a little bit with regards to the keys versus having a combination lock. So hard-sided case, handgun. This one I was saying was a little bit overkill because it is large to put inside my check bag. So I have this duffel bag. This is like maybe 30 liters or something like that to give you a reference of size. That's a little bit tight for getting, clothes and a pair of shoes or toiletries in here as well. For your check bag, which is where firearms need to go, is they need to be checked. They need to be declared when you get to your airline. You declare them to the airline, demonstrate to them, open the case, unlock it, open it, sign some paperwork, put the paperwork inside, confirming that it's unloaded. The gun is unloaded, and then the ammunition needs to be in a separate container inside the same case. I have seen some other information about that too. It used to be that you had to have it like in the original cardboard box. That's no longer required. It just has to be in a separate ammunition holder of some kind that's designed to hold the ammunition, the small arms ammunition. So you basically put that in the case as well, but just not loaded. You demonstrate that to them, you sign a piece of paper, put that in there, close it back up, lock it, and then you're gonna get escorted by the airline's employees or someone that kind of looks like a sky cap sometimes does it as well, and they take you over to TSA, put the luggage or the long gun case in through a machine. You have to wait for TSA to give you the thumbs up, and then they give you the thumbs up, and away it goes. But basically, what we're doing with regards to handguns and smaller hard-sided cases, what they have to do is they have to go inside the luggage themselves, but they still have to be locked inside the luggage. So you would close this up right here, and then you would take your locks and put that through. Now, again, I said you could use padlocks. I have TSA-approved locks or TSA locks that I'm trying to avoid having my locks cut, so that's why I use these. Just what I do. Not everyone's going to be into that or recommend it. It's totally not necessary. Something I do. So combination lock, and then I don't, if I don't ever lose a key or whatever, that's not an issue. So combination lock, put them both on there, and you have 2 locks bare minimum because you don't want somebody to be able to pry this open, have enough play in the lock, and be able to slip their hand in there and then take the contents, leave the container, and so on and so forth as much as you can. So you want that to be a tight lock like these. You lock it up in that way, and then you put that inside the bag, and then you can lock the bag again with a TSA lock, because any other locks, they're going to cut off on your regular check luggage since the last 20 years, as you guys are probably familiar. But like I was saying, those plano ones, they're much smaller, they're much more slender. They kind of look like, if you guys are familiar with like the case that a Glock comes in, they're very similar to that kind of plastic, a little bit heavier duty plastic, but that same size and profile that a Glock 19 or 17 comes in. And then they're obviously more lockable because they have the loopholes and stuff like that. So we would put that inside the luggage, you pack that in your bag. After you declare it, you would have to pull it out, pull this out, open up, sign the paperwork, put that in there, lock it back up, put it in here. Then this bag would get scanned by TSA versus just the standalone rifle case that has however many guns that you can carry in it, which would be only restricted by weight, and then you're just going to pay a fee above 50 pounds, right? So I did recently travel to Arizona from Tampa, and I had a 4-gun case. I kept it under weight, but they got me 4 dimensions on the way back. They didn't hit me on the way out, but on the way back, they said it was over dimensions, but it was still smaller than a golf club case. So it was just the person that was checking me in was a bit of a stickler about it. So you want to try and get, like, I recommend if you're doing carbines or something like that, this is a 1700 Pelican. You can get equivalents from Boyd Harness for a little bit less money, maybe save $100 but I like Pelican. They're really nice. They're really good quality, and they're made here in the United States. But Boyd Harness is a good one as well. So 1700 is a standard size essentially between those two manufacturers. They have equivalents essentially, or like the 1750, you can get 2 rifles in there, a handgun, some other stuff, magazines, ammunition boxes, stuff like that. But usually those 1750s are around 38 pounds empty with the foam. So you get really close to that threshold. So if you have 2 8-pound guns, you're like right there at the 50-pound mark before you even start putting other stuff in there. So you just got to be cognizant of that. I might be a little bit heavy on that 38 pounds, but it's definitely over 30 pounds when you get to a 1750. This is a 1700. I'm not exactly sure of the weight of this one with the foam. And obviously you have the foam to protect the contents as much as possible. So there's a couple other things that I do with that, but we'll get into long guns here in a second. So anyway, that's what you would do, is you would just lock this up. You know, you would put your locks on, however that goes. And, you know, this is after you've declared to the airline. So you get to check in. You have to go to check in. You can't do like the sky cap outside and stuff like that. You have to go inside and declare the firearm to the airline. And then that will affect, just so you guys know, like online check-in on the way back. They won't let you do that. You have to do it at the airport to check in because you declared a firearm on the way out. Even if you're not bringing it back with you, they're going to notate that on your itinerary internally, and you will not be able to do online check-ins. That does affect you, at least with Southwest and Delta, I've noticed here domestically. I don't know who else that might affect or not, but that's typically why that is, just so you're aware. If you're on a multiple reservation, like if you have your wife and 2 kids with you, that is going to affect check-in. So just be aware of that. Okay, so I'm at my house. I've packed my bag. I've got all my gear in here, whatever, clothes, whatever it might be. This is going to be my other, my check bag. I would then stuff this thing in here. Like I said, this is a little bit of a large one. Get that in there, all the tags and labels and stuff like that with your name on it and so forth. I also recommend you guys use air tags. I would use air tags because they're relatively inexpensive for most people, or some kind of equivalent to an air tag that allows you to electronically track your luggage. It's a good way of keeping track of stuff. So I put one inside. Typically, I put an air tag. So I have some hard cases on these, but I put these on the inside of my luggage. Then I also always put these on the inside of the hard case with the guns. There's a couple ways of doing that. Personally, I've used like gaffer tape on the inside underneath the foam, taped in there. The battery's good for a year. If something happens, you can at least locate the case and maybe recover something if it was ever gone missing for some reason. Anyway, air tagging stuff, I'm really into that these days just for travel. So I'll put one on the luggage. I'll have one in the case with the gun in case they ever get separated for any reason. I will always lock this bag after everything's been declared and given to the airline information-wise, and then send this through TSA. TSA doesn't need to see it again. I don't need to open anything up. They give me the thumbs up. This goes away under the plane. I have 2 methods of tracking that particular item. It's just a real peace of mind when you're sitting on your plane and you can see them get, loaded on there, you know the luggage is actually on the plane. I know that Delta Airlines, if you have their app and all that stuff, will actually let you know when your luggage is on the plane. They scan it, all that stuff. That's a pretty cool thing. But this is just a little extra reassurance for me, for no matter what airline I'm traveling with, and keeping track of stuff while I'm out on the road at Airbnbs and different things like that, that I know where my stuff is. So anyway, this is what it would look like. I've said this is a little bit overkill and big for handguns, but you can do a smaller one, and it goes inside the other check bag with your clothes and stuff like that. It doesn't just be that little case by itself. Now, I wouldn't use the plano case if you're just planning on checking a handgun and you're just going to give them that plano case. It definitely should be inside of another bag, in my opinion, because that's just a potential recipe for disaster. I'm not even sure how that would work out for you. So unless you had one of these bigger ones to check by itself, I wouldn't do the plano case. It meets the requirements for the hard-sided thing, but it's just not very heavy duty for getting checked solo. So always inside another bag for me when it's the smaller, thinner cases. Even though this one would technically allow for me to then do the handgun by itself, because the size of this case and the padding on the inside and all that stuff, it's like a mini briefcase essentially. So anyway, so that's that. Obviously, like I said, I'm not giving you guys legal advice, but you do want to check the laws of where you're going. You can check the 2023 Traveler's Guide. You can buy those on Amazon. It's a little booklet essentially telling you all the different laws if you're not familiar with where you're going, or contact your lawyer or whatever you need to do to make sure you're doing something legal. Port Authority in New York, somebody will grab you if you go from, anywhere else where your gun is legal. They'll let you board a plane and fly to New York, and then when you get to New York, you're in serious trouble. So you just gotta pay attention to the laws of where you're going, the laws of where you're at, what you're taking with you, separate from all the stuff with TSA. So just be mindful of all that stuff and be aware of what you need to do there. Yeah, if you're going out west, if you're traveling to Arizona, like I said, or Montana, or wherever you're going with your hardware. I've had a lot of new gun owners hit the industry in the last couple of years for obvious reasons, and it's good to let you guys know how the rest of us are doing it and taking care of it. So moving on to long guns and this kind of thing, I actually have this here, which will kind of shift around a little bit. This is how I travel with long guns, and I would tuck a handgun in here, no problem as well. I like to keep things organized. Again, I'm a big fan of the air tags. This is a very similar thing. So this one's gonna be relatively lightweight because this, again, is the Pelican 1700, like I had mentioned. I bring this in with my other checked baggage. Usually I have 2 checked bags when I'm traveling with firearms for the most part, whether it's for training and or hunting or whatever out west. So I have this in my my clothes in a separate bag with other stuff, gear, what have you. I bring this in. This one has 4 locking points, which is really great to keep someone from prying one end and grabbing stuff out of here and so forth, which is really good. Real heavy duty. They can take a beating. I've had a 1750 that I've had for almost 8 years now, and it's showing some wear, but definitely holds up well, and the firearms don't get jostled around for critical components like electronic optics and optics itself with glass and so forth, as well as any other fragile stuff that would be in here. Most of the stuff is a tool, so it's used to taking a beating, but at least your zero is not getting shifted and stuff like that for the most part as they toss your stuff around through baggage claim and stuff. But anyway, so you do the same thing. You walk up, declare a firearm, open it up like this, demonstrate that it's empty. You come in with it locked, obviously. You want to go through the airport with this locked, and you want to have that cased. You want to have, if you have ammunition tucked here or something like that, it's in its box there. Magazines are here. Demonstrate the gun's unloaded. Used to be you had to show them it was unloaded. Now you just tell them it's unloaded and sign a piece of paper that says that it is unloaded. As you're traveling with other items, like if you were traveling with NFA items, for lack of a better term, which is the National Firearms Act, 1932, which would be like a suppressor, for example, or an SBR or an SBS. You need to have your documentation with you. It's not something the airline is asking you for. Without legal advice, you need to have your paperwork with you, at least a copy of it. What I like to do, and this is, again, not legal advice, it's just what I travel with, is a photocopy of my paperwork for this suppressor or whatever suppressor, and a copy of it in my phone electronically that I've scanned in. That way I've got some redundancy on that paperwork. I slip the paperwork usually underneath the foam, so it's always with the firearm while I'm traveling. There's supposed to be only one agency that's really allowed to ask you for that documentation, but if anyone asks, you can easily present it and not cause a problem. I would rather not escalate that situation with whoever for whatever reason. And then SBRs is a little bit different, as well as SBSs, especially depending on state laws where you're going and stuff like that. So you guys really need to be very clear about traveling with items like that. But for 16-inch guns and regular pistols and nothing that's, obviously more complicated in terms of travel, the most complicated thing I'm usually traveling with is a suppressor. So I have documentation for that suppressor that stays with the case and with my person. 2 different copies, obviously. One's electronic, one's hard copy, but it's still a photocopy, not the original. I never travel with originals. If I lose them, I think that's a little bit of a difficulty for me later on. So you are allowed to travel with the ammunition stored separately inside the same case, locked up. Make sure the gun's empty. Like I said, you want to show up with the gun case locked. You get into the check-in line. I have a firearm to declare. Blah, 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 do all your check-in stuff. They'll take you over to TSA. TSA scans the case or the luggage and accepts it, and you go from there. So I want you guys to realize it's quite normal to travel with firearms, and you're well within your rights to travel with firearms, and you should travel with firearms. I don't think that there's any reason not to. Even if you just want to have it with you and it's legal where you're going, I would do it. It's totally fine. So that's that. With regards to long guns as well, it's very similar, just a standalone case by itself. The next thing I would like to get into, travel with armor. So I've kind of touched on this with you guys before, but seems relevant here now again. Carry-ons are allowed to have armor. We have a rifle rated plate here that I always travel with. So my laptop, my mouse pad, all my other stuff kind of goes in here and fits just fine. This is an Eberly stock. I really like this. So I have other stuff that I travel with. You can have a flashlight with you. You can have first aid kit. I have all that stuff with me as well when I travel, even on airplanes. A couple tourniquets, different things like that. So I keep all that stuff in the bag, but you're allowed to travel with the armor. And this can go with you on board as a carry-on. So that's allowed as well. Here in the States, it is different than Canada, so you definitely need to be aware of that. The threat level on that body armor is level 3+, so that's stopping all your AKs, your AR-15s, handguns, shotguns. It's stopping a lot of different ammunition. 308 rifles. I mean, it's stopping a lot of different things. Plate carriers with plates, you're allowed to travel with that as well, and I've had no issue with that, checked bag or otherwise. But typically when I'm on board the plane, I have the backpack armor with me. I'll usually check this below, because usually when I'm traveling for like training and stuff like that, wear the heavy boots onto the plane to save some weight, throw the plate carrier underneath. You got maybe 30 pounds worth of gear in there. Then you have 20 pounds left over for your clothing and toiletries and stuff like that. And unless it's winter travel, usually you'll stay under that 50-pound marker pretty easily with some smart packing, because you can also take some of your clothing and put it in your backpack or whatever you might need to go as a carry-on, or your second carry-on above in like a rollerboard or whatever. So I always accommodate the armor quite easily as well, but you're allowed to travel with that here in the States. Again, check your laws. I'm not a lawyer, but that is something that you can do as well. So that's pretty much it. So I just wanted you guys to get some information from us in terms of travel with firearms. It is normal for some people that don't do it all the time, a little bit uncomfortable when you first get into doing that. I've been traveling with firearms for over 20 years, so I've just done the whole evolution. I traveled pre-9/11 with firearms. I traveled post 9/11. It was very interesting when we still had the military presence in the airports. They would just kind of come and stand next to you, like directly next to you. I've had that happen to me while traveling post 9/11, but very recently after 9/11, I would say like 2003. So just, still very fresh 2 years later. And we still had the military in the airports posted there with rifles and stuff like that, that they would stand over you while you checked in, even though you just had your deer rifle with your dad or whatever. But I've gone through that whole evolution prior to 9/11, post 9/11. The airlines have always been great to me. I've had good experiences with Delta and Southwest and their employees, and I've never had any issues like that. TSA has always been very cool as well. And if you do everything you're supposed to do, and you do it the way that you're supposed to do, like I've suggested here, and you definitely need to check out the links and the different stuff we're gonna feather into this video so that you guys start off on the right foot, it should be very simple. And the same thing with the armor. There's not much that you need to do with the armor. When I go through TSA with this stuff, I have pre-check, but they always end up pulling it out because it's not like something I declare beforehand. So they end up like looking at it a second time or whatever. It never really holds me up or anything like that. They're totally cool with it. I've had talks with TSA about, our products and their interest in them as well. So they're just doing their jobs. And if you do your end of it, it should be really smooth. One other thing too, for travel and in general, for tracking assets, again, this is the AirTag type of plug, but this is from Strike Industries. It actually attaches to your pick rail which is super cool. So you can put that in various locations. I have this one right here because of where I mostly grip my forend, and all my work with my weak hand is on that area. So I've got this back here more close to the optic. Obviously, this is only a way to connect it to the upper in this particular case, but you sandwich your air tag in here, and there's a special key adapter that you get with it, so it can't just be taken off with any tools. There's just a regular screw and nut on this side, but the control of that loosening and tightening is from a special key, which I actually happen to have here on my truck keys. It's this tiny little guy right here. And you get this again from Strike Industries, very innovative thing. I think I saw this announced beginning of this year, 2023, I guess in time for SHOT Show or whatever it was, and they were out on the market pretty quickly after that. You just get this guy in there and you can tighten it down or loosen it, but whatever. So I have an air tag sandwiched in here, and then obviously the battery's good for a year. And also it's like another way to be carrying a battery in case, this battery goes down. I could literally steal it from my air tag and turn this thing back on electronically if that was something I desire to do. So definitely want to repower one of my optics or something like that in the field. Just something cool to check out. Again, Strike Industries product that holds your air tag to your rifle itself. So, and I was mentioning that to you guys, is where I have the air tag that's connected to the luggage itself, in this case a rifle case, a long gun case. Now there's one attached to the asset itself as well, so it's harder to separate it from a tracking device. I like that aspect of it, and I'm gonna be using it on a trip coming up this month, and I'll give you guys some more feedback on that after the fact, because I'll actually do an entire rifle course for 3 days with this attached. Yeah, we'll go from there. It's definitely a product I would check out, Strike Industries. Anyway, that's it, guys. Check us out, maxbodyarmor.com, for all your body armor and stuff like that. We're gonna keep introducing more products as we go here. Appreciate all you guys' support, and we'll see you guys again soon.